Don't miss out on new videos. Click the bell. And if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up for more.
Hi, welcome to Introduction to Spanish. My name is Alicia, and I'm joined by...
Hi everyone, I'm Leah. In this series, you'll learn everything you need to know to get started learning Spanish.
That's right, and we're here to help guide you through your journey. In this lesson, you'll learn the reasons why you should start learning Spanish, about the different types of Spanish dialects, and how to get started. There are many reasons you should start learning Spanish. Did you know? Spanish is the second most spoken language in the entire world. There are even more native speakers of Spanish than there are native speakers of English. Knowing Spanish allows you to communicate with more people.
And Spanish isn't just a language, but a culture and a way of living.
Many cultural experiences, modes of thinking, and ways of living can only truly be understood by speakers of a given language.
When we are thinking, we use our native language to do so. But if you learn another language and become multilingual, you can actually choose to think in another language. Just imagine what it'd be like thinking to yourself in Spanish.
Things that are inherent in language, such as degrees of politeness or gender classes in everyday nouns, impact the way people in that culture interact with one another. Thinking in another language allows you to see why people in that culture do things the way that they do. Learning a new language then provides a new way for you to see life, and this ultimately helps you to grow as a person.
If you like to travel, then you must know how important language is. This is particularly true for Spanish-speaking countries.
Unlike many other countries around the world, the majority of people in most Spanish-speaking countries have a very poor ability to speak English. If you hope to interact with locals in most Spanish-speaking countries, it's crucial that you learn how to communicate in Spanish.
And considering that Spanish is the second most spoken language in the world, you're missing out on a lot of what Spanish culture has to offer if you don't know how to speak Spanish.
If you're eager to travel and see the world, learning Spanish may be the catalyst you need to kickstart your journey, and perhaps one day make that dream a reality.
Did you know the Spanish spoken in Mexico isn't exactly the same as the Spanish spoken in Spain? Spanish is a super language that spans multiple continents.
There are some differences in the language based on region, but these differences will only reveal themselves to you once you start learning Spanish. The beauty of it is that once you learn standard Spanish, you'll be able to understand any Spanish-speaking person, regardless of where they're from.
Some dialects and accents, however, can be more easily understood than others.
Mexican Spanish, Argentinian, and Spanish from Chile, for example, are generally easier to understand because they're spoken slower and words are pronounced more clearly.
Interestingly, Argentinian Spanish has a big Italian influence, so there are many uses of Italian words in the language itself. This makes it easier for people who know Italian to learn and understand Argentinian.
In this series, we'll teach you the most universal form called Standard Spanish, and this will ensure that you'll be able to communicate with Spanish speakers from all over the world.
Learning a new language is just a matter of having a good learning method, practice, and time.
Let's begin by teaching your first few words in Spanish.
In reality, though, you most likely know some Spanish already. Everybody knows patio, hola, and fiesta. Let's teach you something that you might not know, but which is very useful. Muchas gracias. It means thank you very much. Muchas gracias.
This is perhaps the most useful phrase to learn since it's used a lot in Spanish.
Always answer muchas gracias to show your appreciation. Muchas gracias.
Now you try.
Muchas gracias. Muchas means many, and gracias means thanks. So the phrase muchas gracias literally means many thanks. Muchas gracias.
Repeat after Leah.
Muchas gracias.
Keep repeating until you get it.
Muchas gracias.
Okay, one last time.
Muchas gracias.
Well done. Now you know how to say thank you in Spanish. We've covered a lot of things already, so why don't we wrap up the first lesson and recap what we've learned? In this lesson, you learned the benefits of studying Spanish, the different dialects in Spanish, and how to say thank you in Spanish.
Muchas gracias.
See you in the next lesson. Bye!
Bye!
Hi! Welcome to Introduction to Spanish. My name is Alicia, and I'm joined by...
Hi everyone, I'm Leah.
In this lesson, you'll learn the basics of Spanish pronunciation. Spanish is a rich language that's decorated with a wide variety of accents and dialects. Since accents and dialects play a huge role in pronunciation, let's take a more detailed look at the different types of accents and dialects of Spanish from around the world.
First off, an accent is just a particular way of pronouncing words, like tomato or tomato. They may sound slightly different from one another, but all the rules that govern their use in the language are essentially the same.
Dialects, on the other hand, may branch off from the standard language by differing in grammar, word order, and of course pronunciation as well. Therefore, it's generally harder to understand a dialect than an accent.
First, let's make some distinctions as to how we refer to the Spanish language. First, español. Español is generally used to refer to the Spanish language as a supergroup. This includes all varieties of Spanish spoken in Spain and internationally. Beneath that is Castilian, which is the actual term used to exclusively refer to the Spanish spoken in Spain.
Mexican Spanish is a dialect of Spanish that is spoken in Mexico. Unsurprisingly, due to its proximity to the USA, Mexican Spanish uses far more English words than other dialects of Spanish.
Another example, which we mentioned in the previous episode, is Argentinian. Argentinian is another dialect of Spanish spoken in Argentina, and it closely resembles Italian because a huge wave of Italians migrated to Argentina during the 20th century. So Argentinian actually sounds a bit like Italian.
Pace is a very important aspect of Spanish because it varies greatly depending on the dialect of Spanish spoken.
The Spanish is almost renowned for being a fast-paced language.
The pace greatly depends on the region, however, as people in Mexico and some South American countries generally speak slower than speakers from Spain.
In some Spanish-speaking countries, it's common practice to shorten words. For example, words ending in an S will instead have the final vowel prolonged. Casas, for instance, would be pronounced casa.
We also mentioned before that some dialects of Spanish are influenced by other languages, such as Italian and English. Mexican Spanish uses a lot of English words, and English, being considered a slower-paced language, slows down the pace of the language. And that's one of the reasons Mexican Spanish is slower than the Spanish spoken in Spain.
The pace of Spanish, then, depends greatly on the dialect of Spanish.
For the most part, English and Spanish share a lot of the same sounds, which generally correspond to the same letters.
Thankfully, learning Spanish pronunciation is much easier than English pronunciation. Learning English is more a matter of memorization and practice, whereas Spanish is a combination of learning and practice. It takes much longer for a student to learn English pronunciation than Spanish pronunciation.
That's because there are many more irregular pronunciations of words in English than there are in Spanish. Take these words, for example. The first word is pronounced colonel, not colonel. The second word is pronounced arise. Adding an N, however, doesn't give you arisen, but arisen. The last word is pronounced ate, but adding an H doesn't give you hate. Instead, it becomes height.
Spanish, on the other hand, can mostly be pronounced as it's read. Almendra. The word almendra, meaning almond, is pronounced al-men-dra. It's pronounced exactly the same as it's written. Almendra. The same thing happens with the word carretera, meaning road. Carretera, it's pronounced ca-re-te-ra. Exactly how it's written. Carretera.
That's a good example which demonstrates sounds that do not exist in English.
That's right. The double R here is a rolled R. It can be a little tricky for some learners. Carretera. Another common word is perro, meaning dog. Perro. Perro.
The trick is to build pressure at the point of contact, using the tip of your tongue to contact the top teeth and gum ridge, and then releasing the pressure quickly by flicking the tongue up and back. When you release the pressure, allow only the smallest amount of air to pass through, so that a tiny passage opens and closes rapidly. This should cause the tongue to vibrate or roll correctly. Try again.
Perro. Perro.
Well done! Let's wrap up this lesson by recapping what we've learned. In this lesson, you learned about accents and dialects in Spanish, that the spoken pace depends on the dialect, and that Spanish is mostly pronounced as it's written. Hi! Welcome to Introduction to Spanish. My name is Alicia, and I'm joined by...
Hi everyone, I'm Leah.
In this lesson, you'll learn the basics of Spanish grammar. Word order refers to the order in which words are structured to form a sentence in a given language. Consider the English sentence, I read books. If we break down the English sentence, I read books, we can see that the subject I is presented first, followed by the verb read, and then finally the object, books, is positioned last. The basic word order for English, then, is subject, verb, object, or SVO for short.
Now, let's compare that same sentence, I read books, in Spanish. Yo leo libros. If we break down the Spanish sentence, we get the subject, yo, meaning I. Then comes the verb, leo, meaning read. And finally, we have the object, libros, meaning books. The word order for basic Spanish, then, is subject, verb, object, or SVO for short.
As you can see, the word order for sentences in Spanish is the same as that of English. This means that you can essentially swap out English words for Spanish words in an English sentence to convert it to Spanish. So imagine you wanted to say, I ate an apple, but in Spanish. Just swap out the words.
I in Spanish is yo. Ate in Spanish is comí. An is una, and apple is manzana. Altogether, it's yo comí una manzana.
So, I ate an apple in Spanish is
Yo comí una manzana.
You can form nearly all basic sentences in Spanish just by following the SVO word order. We just saw how easy it was to form basic sentences in Spanish and how similar it was to forming basic English sentences. Luckily, it's actually even easier to form sentences in Spanish than it is in English. That's because Spanish is much more flexible when it comes to word order compared to English. Let's go back to the two examples we used earlier. More often than not, if we wanted to say, I read books and I ate an apple in Spanish, we would not usually say,
Yo leo libros. Yo comí una manzana.
But instead we would just say,
Leo libros. Comí una manzana.
Notice how the subject I is omitted from the sentence. This is how most Spanish sentences are constructed and spoken in real life.
When it's clear who or what the subject is, most Spanish speakers would omit the subject altogether. Yo leo libros and yo comí una manzana would only be used if the subject is unclear or if you wanted to place a stronger emphasis on the subject, as if to say, I am the one who reads books, or I was the one who ate the apple.
So, most of the time, we can actually express any simple action in Spanish with just two words, the verb and the object in Spanish. So far, we've only looked at affirmative sentences in Spanish. But what if you wanted to make the sentence negative?
Well, that's very easy as well. All you have to do is just add no before the verb and that's it.
So, I don't read books would be
No leo libros. Same thing for I didn't eat an apple. Just add no before the verb. No comí una manzana. And that's all there is to it.
Once again, it's much simpler to form questions in Spanish than it is in English.
There's actually a variety of different methods of forming a question in Spanish. Let's go through some of them. Will seem a little strange if we ask our own selves a question in Spanish. So let's introduce a new subject. Let's go with Juan, a very typical Spanish name. So instead of I read books, we now have Juan reads books. Juan lee libros.
The simplest way we can turn that statement into a question is by just raising our intonation at the end of the sentence.
Juan lee libros? Meaning, does Juan read books?
In conversation, we just need to raise the intonation at the end to express that it's a question. In writing, however, we have to include the question mark at the end, just like in English. But unlike English, questions in Spanish are marked with an inverted question mark at the beginning of the question as well.
Juan lee libros?
Another simple way we can turn a statement into a question is by adding a question tag at the end of a sentence. One question tag in English, for example, is right? Something something statement, right? It works in exactly the same way in Spanish.
Juan lee libros, no? Juan reads books, doesn't he?
The final way to make a sentence in Spanish is to actually switch the verb and the subject. So statements in Spanish would normally be SVO, but to formulate a question, it'll be VSO. The verb and subject are switched.
¿Lee Juan libros? Meaning, does Juan read books?
All of these questions mean the same thing, but they're not completely identical. There are tiny nuances that go along with the method you use to formulate a question.
The first and last examples appear to have exactly the same meaning, But Juan lee libros places a greater emphasis on Juan because the subject appears first in the sentence, as opposed to lee Juan libros, where the emphasis is on the verb.
As you can see, there are many ways to form basic questions in Spanish. In this lesson, you learned about the word order of Spanish, how to form affirmative and negative sentences, about the omission of the subject, and how to form questions. Hi! Welcome to Introduction to Spanish. My name is Alicia, and I'm joined by...
Hi everyone, I'm Leah.
In this lesson, you'll learn the basics of Spanish writing. Just like English, Spanish uses Roman letters in its writing.
Unlike English, the Spanish alphabet has one additional letter called ñ, which appears after the letter N and before the letter O.
This letter looks like a regular N, but with a tilde on top. It sounds like a combination between an N and a Y sound, like in the word canyon.
Ñ. Español. Niño. Mañana.
Other than this one extra letter, the Spanish alphabet is essentially written the same as the English alphabet. For the most part, punctuation in Spanish is similar to English. A period marks the end of a sentence, and a comma indicates a pause. Exclamation and question marks, however, are a different story. In English, we place an exclamation mark at the end of a sentence to denote that it's exclamatory. We do the same thing for question marks to denote that the sentence is a question.
In Spanish, however, exclamation marks and question marks must be placed at the end and at the beginning of the exclamatory phrase or question. Hola. Hola? The inverted marks must be placed whenever a new exclamatory or question phrase is formed, even if it is within the same sentence. Hola y buenas noches.
Notice how this only applies to the phrase and not to the entire sentence itself.
Juan, ¿a dónde vas?
On the other hand, the ending marks still go at the end of the sentence, regardless of whether the words are part of the question or not.
¿A dónde vas, Juan?
To indicate a sentence that is both a question and an exclamation, use both marks. Ensure that you're being consistent with which marks go on the inside and which go on the outside.
¿Y tú quién te crees que eres? ¿Y tú quién te crees que eres?
Compared to English, Spanish doesn't capitalize as many words as English does.
Let's go over a few cases where English capitalizes words when Spanish does not.
The days of the week and the months of the year are not capitalized in Spanish. For example,
Hoy es jueves 23 de octubre.
seasons of the year are also not capitalized.
El invierno se acerca.
Personal titles are not capitalized unless they are abbreviations.
Señor, señorita, doctor.
Titles, such as those of a movie or book, capitalize the first word only. Every other word in the title is written in lowercase.
Harry Potter y la piedra filosofal.
Names of countries and cities are capitalized, but names of languages are not.
Reino Unido. Estados Unidos. Hablo inglés.
Finally, we come to the Spanish accent mark. Spanish uses a mark called the acute accent. It looks like a diagonal line which starts from the bottom left and rises towards the upper right.
This accent mark appears above the letter. More specifically, accents will only appear over the 5 vowels in Spanish.
The Spanish accent is used to indicate that the syllable which has the accent must be stressed. So always stress the syllable which has the accent.
Médico. Compró.
Some words are spelled the same and sound the same, but have different meanings in Spanish.
Él. El.
In these situations, the accent is used to differentiate the two words, so it's clear exactly which word we're referring to.
Más. Más.
Okay, so we've covered the main accent mark in Spanish, but what about these ones?
Don't be fooled by the first example. Even though it might look like an accent, it's just the letter ñ in Spanish.
The second example is an accent marker, and it's used to indicate that the U should be pronounced. This is because the letter U is usually silent when it comes after the letter G. Consider the following examples.
Guerra. Guerrilla. Vergüenza. Pingüino.
Notice how the U is silent in the first two examples,
Guerra. Guerrilla.
but pronounced in the last two.
Vergüenza. Pingüino.
Keep in mind, though, that this accent only occurs in a few words that have the letters G and U together. In this lesson, you learned that Spanish uses Roman letters like English, with one additional letter. Exclamation and question marks appear inverted at the beginning of the phrase and upright at the end of the sentence. Days, months, and seasons aren't capitalized in Spanish, and the acute accent is used in Spanish mainly to indicate stress. Hi! Welcome to Introduction to Spanish. My name is Alicia, and I'm joined by...
Hi everyone, I'm Leah.
In this lesson, we'll focus on teaching you the most useful Spanish words and phrases for absolute beginners.
Make sure you're repeating the words out loud after I say the examples.
Are you ready? Let's get started. The best phrase to learn when studying a new language is one that expresses gratitude and appreciation. If you had to learn only a single phrase, this would be it.
We taught you this phrase in the first lesson of this series. Do you remember what it was? Muchas gracias. And it means thank you very much. Muchas gracias.
Keep repeating after Leah until you get it.
Muchas gracias.
Your turn.
Muchas gracias. Muchas gracias.
Okay, one last time.
Muchas gracias. A phrase you would often hear in response to muchas gracias or thank you very much is de nada. De nada. It literally means of nothing, but it's used to say you're welcome. De nada.
Your turn.
De nada.
Okay, one last time.
De nada. Both muchas gracias and de nada are expressions often used by Spanish speakers.
The next phrase we'll teach you is perhaps the second most useful phrase of all. It's used to apologize or to excuse yourself.
Perdone. Perdone.
Okay, your turn.
Perdone. Perdone.
One last time.
Perdone. Perdone is the formal way to apologize or excuse yourself. To say it in a more casual way, it's perdona. Perdona.
Your turn.
Perdona. Perdona.
One last time.
Perdona.
Now you can say thank you very much, excuse me, and I'm sorry in Spanish. Let's move on. Asking where something is an incredibly important and useful phrase to learn. You're going to need this when asking where the bathroom, the train station, or where the hotel is. To do so, say,
¿Dónde está?
Then add the location.
Cuarto de baño. ¿Dónde está el cuarto de baño? ¿Dónde está el cuarto de baño?
Repeat after Leah.
¿Dónde está el cuarto de baño?
Remember, if you want to be a bit more polite, you could add excuse me before the question.
Perdone, ¿dónde está el cuarto de baño?
One last time.
Perdone, ¿dónde está el cuarto de baño?
For a hotel, it'd be,
Perdone, ¿dónde hay un hotel? Perdone, ¿dónde hay un hotel? Have you noticed how the sentences vary slightly? If the thing you're looking for isn't specific, a hotel, we would use the articles un, unos, una, or unas. On the other hand, if it's specific, the hotel, then we would use el, la, los, or las instead. Perdone, ¿dónde hay un hotel? Perdone, ¿dónde está el hotel?
and remember to thank the person if they were helpful.
Muchas gracias.
In this final lesson, you learned how to say thank you, excuse me, I'm sorry, and to ask where something is in Spanish. And in this series, we introduced you to the basics of Spanish pronunciation, grammar, writing, and more. Let's conclude with some parting advice from Leah and listen to some of her tips on how to learn Spanish from a native Spanish perspective.
Every day, I see a lot of learners struggling with Spanish verbs. My advice is to start with the simple form of the verb and then learn all the tenses. Only move on to compound verbs when you've mastered the simple form. By far, the biggest mistake that I see learners make is using the incorrect intonation. Intonation is very important in Spanish. The intonation is determined by stress, which in a lot of cases is actually marked by the accent marker. We go into great detail about this aspect of Spanish in our Ultimate Guide to Spanish Pronunciation video series. We'll link that at the end of the video. Get comfortable with stress patterns and accents in Spanish, and you'll avoid making this mistake. My last piece of advice is to watch contemporary videos, such as our videos here at SpanishPod101.com. This will ensure that you're learning real, applicable Spanish in the fastest and most effective way.
You've reached the end of this course, Introduction to Spanish, but it's only the beginning of your journey to Spanish fluency. Where do you go from here? Try our innovative Spanish culture series, where we teach you beginner vocab and even more useful phrases. Or check out any of our other video series. We have many different categories for you to choose from. Good luck as you continue learning Spanish, and I'll see you in another video. Bye!
Bye!